Have you ever wondered what it would be like to completely transform your life by learning a new language? To go from struggling with basic phrases to confidently expressing your thoughts and connecting with people from around the world. What if I told you that the journey to English fluency doesn't have to be filled with boring textbooks and complicated grammar rules? That there's a more natural, more effective way to master this global language. Today, I want to share with you an inspiring story, a story about a young woman named Jenny who discovered that the secret to learning English wasn't found in memorizing vocabulary lists or drilling grammar exercises, but in something much simpler and more powerful. Her journey from a hesitant beginner to a confident English speaker will show you that with the right approach, you too can break through the barriers that might be holding you back in your language learning journey. So let me take you to a warm summer day on a train somewhere in Europe, where Jenny's transformation began with a simple conversation. Jenny sat nervously on the train, her English textbook clutched tightly in her hands. She had been studying for months, but still felt like a complete beginner. The language seemed to exist only on paper for her, a jumble of rules and words that never quite connected to real life. As she glanced up, she noticed two women sitting across from her, chatting animatedly in English. For a moment, Jenny considered burying herself back in her textbook, too intimidated to engage. But something inside her pushed her to take a risk. With a racing heart, she leaned forward and spoke a few simple phrases in English. The words felt clumsy on her tongue, and she was certain she was making mistakes with every syllable. To her surprise, the women smiled warmly. Not only did they understand her, but they responded with encouraging nods and gentle corrections. They were from England, they explained, returning home from a conference. Though the conversation lasted only about 10 minutes before Jenny had to get off at her station, something remarkable had happened in that brief exchange. The women had given Jenny more than just their contact information and an invitation to visit England someday. They had given her a taste of what real communication in English felt like. The genuine connection that can happen, even with limited vocabulary, when there's a sincere desire to connect. That short interaction changed everything for Jenny. No longer was English just an academic subject to be studied. It was a living bridge to new relationships and experiences. With renewed motivation, she committed to working on her English every day. She translated texts, watched films in English, and practiced speaking whenever she could find an opportunity. 6 months flew by, and Jenny could hardly believe the progress she had made. Her English had improved dramatically, but she knew there was still so much more to learn. That's when she made a decision that would accelerate her language journey beyond anything she could have imagined. She would go to London and immerse herself completely in an English-speaking environment. The London that greeted Jenny was overwhelming at first, a whirlwind of accents, idioms, and cultural references that made her question whether her months of preparation had been enough. But she had come too far to let intimidation hold her back. She enrolled in an English language school, eager to take her skills to the next level. Jenny's first day of class arrived with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Would she be able to keep up? Would the other students be far more advanced? Would the teacher's methods work for her learning style? As she walked into the classroom, she was greeted by a diverse group of fellow language learners from around the world, all harboring the same hopes and fears. The teacher who entered the room wasn't what Jenny had expected. Rather than the stern, traditional instructors she had imagined, this young woman radiated warmth and enthusiasm. She introduced herself with a friendly smile that immediately put the nervous students at ease. After the class members introduced themselves, the teacher posed a question that would change Jenny's entire approach to language learning. What do you think is the most important aspect of learning a new language? She asked. Looking around the room with genuine curiosity, the students offered various answers: grammar, vocabulary, good memory. But the teacher gently shook her head. Those things matter, she acknowledged, but they're tools, not the essence. Language is, at its core, about communication. It's about connecting with others, expressing your thoughts and feelings, and understanding the world around you. She continued, that's why in this class, we're going to approach learning differently. We won't be burying ourselves in textbooks or memorizing lists of words in isolation. Instead, we'll be using English actively every day, in meaningful contexts that matter to you personally. Jenny felt a surge of excitement. This approach resonated deeply with her experience on the train. The conversation with those English women had taught her more in 10 minutes than hours of solitary study. Many students, the teacher explained, make the mistake of studying a language without actually using it. They memorize words and grammar rules, but never put them into practice through real communication. It's like learning all the rules of swimming without ever getting into the water. In this class, she continued, we'll certainly learn vocabulary and grammar, but we'll do it through usage, not isolated study. You'll discover that when words and patterns are learned in meaningful contexts, they stick in your memory naturally, without the need for rote memorization. The other students nodded, some with relief that they wouldn't be facing the tedious exercises they had dreaded, others with skepticism about this unconventional approach. Jenny, however, was fully convinced. Her brief taste of real communication had already shown her the power of learning through usage. As the first class continued, they didn't open textbooks or begin copying grammar rules. Instead, they spoke about their hobbies, their reasons for learning English, their experiences in London so far. The teacher guided them gently, providing vocabulary and correcting major errors, but always keeping the focus on meaningful exchange rather than perfect accuracy. By the end of that first session, Jenny felt an unfamiliar sensation. She had spent 2 hours in an English class and had enjoyed every minute. More importantly, she had actually used English, not just studied it. She had expressed real thoughts and connected with real people. She couldn't wait to return the next day. Tuesday's class began with a question from one of the students that had been on Jenny's mind as well. What is the best way to learn new vocabulary? The teacher's eyes lit up. That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked. There are many approaches to vocabulary acquisition, but research consistently shows one method stands above the rest in effectiveness: reading. She explained that people who read regularly in a language learn new words twice as fast as those who don't. When you read for just 30 minutes each day, she said, you encounter words in natural contexts, which helps you understand not just their meanings, but how they're used in real communication. The teacher then shared a strategy for maximizing the benefits of reading for language learners. First, she emphasized, choose reading material that genuinely interests you. This is absolutely crucial. If you're bored by what you're reading, you won't stick with it, and you'll miss out on the benefits. Whether you enjoy mysteries, romances, biographies, or science articles, find texts that spark your curiosity. She continued, second, select material appropriate for your level. You should be able to understand about 90–95% of the words without a dictionary. If you're looking up every other word, the text is too difficult and will become frustrating rather than enjoyable. When you do encounter words you don't know, she advised, look them up in a dictionary, understand their meaning in context, and then continue reading. There's no need to write them down or create flashcards. When you see these words repeatedly in meaningful contexts, they'll become part of your active vocabulary naturally. The teacher also pointed out another significant advantage of reading. Beyond individual words, reading exposes you to how words connect to form phrases and sentences. You absorb grammar patterns intuitively, the way children learn their first language. You begin to develop a feel for what sounds right in English without memorizing complicated rules. Jenny was intrigued by this approach. She had always enjoyed reading, but had never considered it a primary method for language learning. She resolved to find books in English that matched her interests and level. Excited to try this more natural approach to expanding her vocabulary. The class continued with a discussion about life in England and the job market for students. Jenny mentioned that she was hoping to find part-time work, both to support herself financially and to have more opportunities to practice English in real-world settings. Her classmates suggested visiting a local job center, explaining that these government-run facilities offered numerous positions suitable for students. After class, Jenny headed directly to the nearest job center, eager to explore her options. At the center, a helpful staff member reviewed the available positions suitable for someone with Jenny's language skills. With your current level of English, she advised, you could work as a cleaner or as a waitress in a cafe. The waitressing position would give you much more opportunity to practice English, as you'd be interacting with customers throughout your shift. Despite having no previous experience as a waitress, Jenny was drawn to the opportunity for language practice. She accepted the position, excited to begin on Thursday. On Wednesday, Jenny returned to class with growing confidence. She was settling into a routine in London, making progress with her English, and now had a job lined up that would provide both income and language practice. Everything was falling into place more smoothly than she had dared to hope. During class, a quiet Korean student raised his hand with a question that resonated with many in the room. I have a big problem with pronunciation. I understand English well when I read or watch movies, but I'm afraid to speak because my pronunciation isn't good. How can I improve it? The teacher nodded thoughtfully. That's a common challenge, and I'm glad you brought it up. Let's talk about pronunciation and some techniques that can help all of you improve. She began by explaining why pronunciation difficulties arise. When we speak, we use specific muscle movements in our mouth, tongue, and throat. The challenge is that each language requires different muscle patterns. Many English learners use the muscle movements from their native language when speaking English, which creates an accent or sometimes makes certain sounds difficult to produce. She was quick to reassure the class. Having an accent isn't necessarily a problem. Most people can be understood perfectly well, even with an accent. What matters is clarity and confidence, not perfect native like pronunciation. That said, she continued, there's a powerful technique called shadowing that can dramatically improve your pronunciation if you practice it regularly. The concept was simple but effective. Shadowing involved listening to native English speakers and repeating what they say in real time, mimicking not just their words but their intonation, rhythm, and emphasis. This technique works because it mirrors how children learn their first language. The teacher explained. They constantly imitate what they hear, adjusting their pronunciation through repetition until it matches the speech around them. She demonstrated the technique by playing a short audio clip, then shadowing it herself, matching the speaker's pace and intonation precisely. Then she played another clip and invited the class to shadow along with her. Jenny found the exercise challenging but illuminating. She could hear the difference between her pronunciation and the native speakers, which gave her specific areas to focus on. The teacher encouraged them to practice shadowing for just 10 minutes daily, especially before situations where they needed to speak English with confidence, such as presentations or important conversations. After class, Jenny visited the school's reception desk to inquire about extracurricular activities. She was particularly interested in sports, hoping to find another context for practicing English while staying active. The receptionist informed her that the school had both table tennis and football teams, with football practice scheduled for that afternoon. Jenny joined the football training session and was delighted to meet players from Brazil, Japan, Russia, Spain, Argentina, and Italy. Not only would she get regular exercise, but she would also have another opportunity to practice English in a natural, enjoyable setting. As she walked home that evening, Jenny reflected on how quickly her life in London was taking shape. In just 3 days, she had started language classes with an inspiring teacher, secured a part-time job, and joined a sports team with international members. Each of these contexts would provide unique opportunities to practice English, meeting different people and discussing various topics. Thursday brought another exciting development to Jenny's language learning journey. A new student joined their class, an Italian woman named Elizabeth. When Elizabeth spoke, The entire class was impressed by her fluency and natural pronunciation. The teacher, who had taught Elizabeth a year earlier in a beginner's class, expressed amazement at her progress. "Your school in Italy must be very good," the teacher remarked. Elizabeth smiled and shook her head. "I don't go to any school in Italy. I learn English at home, using the techniques you taught me last summer. I read extensively, practice shadowing regularly, and use a technique called thinking aloud. I also make a conscious effort to think in English rather than Italian whenever possible." The class was intrigued, particularly by the unfamiliar term, thinking aloud. Jenny, always eager to learn new approaches, raised her hand to ask about this technique. "It's extremely effective," the teacher explained, "though it requires strong motivation because it might feel a bit strange at first." Elizabeth volunteered to share her experience. "When I started thinking aloud, I began with very simple sentences. 'I can speak English. It's good that I can speak English. I want to get better. I need to practice every day.'" She explained that the greatest challenge was simplifying her thoughts. "In Italian, my thinking was complex and nuanced. I couldn't express exactly the same thoughts in English at first, so I had to find simpler ways to express similar ideas." After practicing regularly, Elizabeth continued, "Thinking in English began to feel natural. The breakthrough came when I met an Australian tourist in Italy. Despite still being a beginner, I was able to communicate effectively because I wasn't translating from Italian to English in my head. My sentences were simple, but they came directly in English." Jenny was captivated by this concept, the idea of bypassing translation altogether and thinking directly in English seemed like the ultimate goal of language learning. A state where English would no longer be a foreign language to study, but simply another way of expressing her thoughts. As the class ended, Jenny felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the wealth of practical techniques she had learned in just 1 week. Reading for natural vocabulary acquisition, shadowing for improved pronunciation, and thinking aloud to develop direct thinking in English. These approaches were already transforming her relationship with the language, making learning feel less like an academic exercise and more like a natural process of growth and connection. The teacher left them with a simple but powerful formula: read, listen, think, and speak in English. 40 minutes of each activity every day will transform your language abilities faster than you can imagine. Jenny committed herself to this balanced approach, determined to make the most of her time in London. The hesitant beginner who had nervously attempted a conversation on a train was rapidly evolving into a confident English speaker. Equipped with effective learning strategies and abundant opportunities to use the language in meaningful contexts. The simple act of reaching out to those English women on the train had set in motion a journey that was opening up not just a new language, but a new world of possibilities. When I first heard Jenny's story, it immediately reminded me of my own language learning journey and those of countless students I've worked with over the years. What makes her experience so valuable is that it highlights several fundamental truths about effective language acquisition that are often overlooked in traditional education. First, Jenny's story shows us that meaningful communication is the true heart of language learning. That brief conversation on the train did more for her motivation and confidence than months of solitary study because it connected language to its purpose. Human connection. When we use a language to express real thoughts and build real relationships, learning accelerates dramatically. Second, her experience illustrates the power of an immersive environment. By surrounding herself with English in London, Jenny created countless opportunities for authentic language use. But the key insight here is that immersion isn't just about location. It's about engagement. You can create immersive experiences wherever you are by actively seeking opportunities to use English in your daily life. Let's explore how you might apply Jenny's learning strategies in your own context. Even if you can't travel to an English-speaking country right now, reading for natural vocabulary acquisition is perhaps the most accessible strategy. In our digital age, English books, articles, and stories are available at virtually any level and on any topic. The key is finding material that genuinely interests you and matches your current proficiency level. If you're a beginner, graded readers are an excellent resource. These are books specifically written or adapted for language learners, using controlled vocabulary and simplified grammar while still telling engaging stories. Many publishers offer series of graded readers at progressive levels, allowing you to gradually increase the complexity as your skills improve. For intermediate learners, young adult fiction can be an excellent bridge to authentic materials. Books written for teenagers often use more straightforward language while still offering compelling narratives. Series like The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, or Percy Jackson have engaged countless English learners worldwide. Advanced learners can explore any genre that interests them. Mystery novels, science fiction, biographies, or current affairs. The important thing is to read regularly, ideally for at least 30 minutes daily, and to approach unfamiliar words as opportunities for growth, rather than obstacles to comprehension. When you encounter unknown words, try to guess their meaning from context before checking a dictionary. This develops your inferencing skills and trains your brain to work with partial information. A crucial ability for real, world language use where you won't always have time to look up every unfamiliar term. Let's turn now to shadowing for pronunciation improvement. The beauty of this technique is that it requires nothing more than a source of clear English speech and your willingness to practice. Podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos, TV shows, and films all provide excellent material for shadowing. For beginners, I recommend starting with slow, clear speech. Perhaps language learning podcasts specifically designed for English learners or audiobooks paired with their text, so you can see the words as you hear and repeat them. Intermediate learners might shadow TED Talks, news broadcasts, or podcast interviews where the speech is natural but generally clear and well articulated. Advanced learners can challenge themselves with faster speech, regional accents, or more complex content like academic lectures or political debates. The key to effective shadowing is regular practice in short sessions. Just 10 minutes daily will yield better results than occasional hour-long sessions. Try to match not just the words, but the intonation patterns, stress, rhythm, and emotional tone of the speaker. Record yourself occasionally to track your progress and identify areas for improvement. Now let's explore the powerful technique of thinking aloud in English. This practice bridges the gap between passive knowledge and active use, training your brain to form thoughts directly in English rather than translating from your native language. As Elizabeth explained in Jenny's story, start with simple sentences about your immediate environment or activities. I'm walking to the store. It's sunny today. I need to buy some bread and milk. Gradually increase the complexity as your confidence grows. I wonder if it's going to rain later. The clouds look quite dark. I should probably take an umbrella just in case. Eventually, you can practice expressing opinions, analyzing situations, or working through problems aloud in English. I'm not sure if I should accept this job offer. The salary is good, but the commute would be very long. I need to consider the impact on my quality of life. The thinking aloud technique might feel awkward at first. Most of us aren't accustomed to talking to ourselves in any language. If speaking aloud feels too strange in public settings, you can practice inner speech in English, consciously forming complete thoughts in your mind without vocalizing them. Both approaches serve the crucial function of bypassing translation, helping you develop direct thinking in English. This skill dramatically improves your speaking fluency because when you can think directly in English, your speech becomes more natural, more immediate, and less hesitant. Beyond these specific techniques, Jenny's story highlights the importance of creating diverse contexts for language use. Her English practice included formal classroom learning, workplace communication as a waitress, social interaction through the football team, and independent study through reading and thinking aloud. This variety is valuable not just for motivation and engagement, but also for developing well-rounded language skills. Different contexts require different vocabulary, registers, and communication styles. Speaking with teammates during a football match uses different language than serving customers at a cafe or discussing literature in a classroom. By engaging with English in multiple contexts, you develop a more flexible and comprehensive command of the language. You learn to adjust your speaking style according to the situation, becoming more formal in professional settings, more casual with friends, more precise in academic contexts. If you're learning English outside an English-speaking country, you can still create this variety by joining language exchange groups, either in person or online, where you can practice conversational English with other learners and native speakers. Finding English speaking clubs or activities related to your hobbies, perhaps an international film club, a multinational sports team, or a global book discussion group. Using language learning apps and platforms that connect you with conversation partners worldwide. Participating in online forums or social media groups focused on topics that interest you, where English is the common language. Taking on volunteer opportunities that involve using English, such as helping with international events, assisting tourists in your area, or translating simple documents for community organizations. Creating an English corner in your home, a designated space where you only speak, read, and think in English, creating a mini immersion environment. These diverse contexts create what linguists call comprehensible input, language that stretches your current abilities while remaining understandable enough to be processed and internalized. This kind of input, combined with opportunities for meaningful output through speaking and writing, drives language acquisition forward naturally. One aspect of Jenny's story that particularly resonates with me is the balanced approach her teacher recommended. 40 minutes each of reading, listening, thinking, and speaking in English daily. This formula acknowledges that complete language proficiency requires developing all skill areas in harmony. Reading builds vocabulary and familiarity with written structures. Listening develops comprehension and attunes your ear to the sounds and rhythms of English. Thinking directly in English builds the neural pathways that support fluent speech. Speaking puts everything together in real communication, providing immediate feedback on your effectiveness and building confidence through successful interactions. The specificity of 40 minutes for each activity might not be practical for everyone's schedule, but the principle of balance is crucial. Many learners focus heavily on one aspect of language, often reading or grammar study, while neglecting others, typically speaking or listening. This imbalance leads to lopsided development. Perhaps strong reading comprehension, but weak conversational skills, or good theoretical knowledge, but poor practical application. By consciously allocating time to all four areas, you ensure harmonious development across all language skills. The exact time distribution might vary according to your needs and schedule, but maintaining some degree of balance is essential for comprehensive proficiency. Another powerful insight from Jenny's story is the importance of emotional engagement in language learning. Notice how her journey began with a moment of genuine connection on the train, an experience that transformed English from an abstract subject to a living tool for a meaningful interaction. This emotional dimension of language learning is often overlooked in traditional education, which tends to focus on cognitive aspects like memorization and rule application. Yet research consistently shows that emotional engagement dramatically enhances learning and retention. When you associate a language with positive experiences, fascinating stories, rewarding conversations, new friendships, or insights into different cultures, your motivation remains high, and your brain forms stronger neural connections for the language material. That's why finding content and contexts that genuinely interest and engage you is not just a matter of making learning more pleasant. It's a fundamental strategy for more effective acquisition. Reading materials should captivate your curiosity. Listening materials should draw you in with compelling content. Speaking opportunities should connect to topics and people that matter to you personally. This principle applies even to the thinking aloud technique. Notice how Elizabeth began with simple, but personally meaningful statements. I can speak English. It's good that I can speak English. I want to get better. These weren't random practice sentences from a textbook. They expressed her genuine thoughts and aspirations, creating an emotional connection to the language practice. As you develop your own language learning strategy, consider how you can infuse emotional engagement into each aspect. Choose reading materials on topics that fascinate you or characters you connect with emotionally. Listen to content that makes you laugh, moves you, or teaches you something you're genuinely curious about. Practice thinking aloud about matters that are meaningful in your life, your goals, relationships, interests, and experiences. Seek speaking opportunities with people who share your interests or values, where conversation flows naturally because you're discussing topics that matter to both of you. This emotional connection transforms language learning from a chore into a journey of personal growth and discovery. It helps you persist through challenges and celebrate progress, not just as academic achievements, but as meaningful expansions of your ability to connect with others and express your authentic self. Let's now look more deeply at some practical strategies for implementing these approaches in daily life, especially for those with busy schedules or limited access to English speaking environments. For reading practice, digital tools have made accessible reading material more available than ever before. E-readers allow you to adjust text size and often include built-in dictionaries for quick reference. Apps like LingQ or ReadLang let you click on unfamiliar words for instant translations while tracking your vocabulary growth over time. Online platforms like Newsela provide news articles at multiple reading levels, allowing you to find the sweet spot between challenge and comprehension. To make daily reading a sustainable habit, try habit stacking, attaching your reading practice to an existing daily routine. Perhaps you read for 15 minutes while eating breakfast, during your lunch break, or just before bed. These consistent small sessions add up to significant exposure over time. For listening and shadowing practice, podcasts offer incredible flexibility. You can listen while commuting, exercising, cooking, or doing household chores, essentially turning dead time into productive language practice. Starting with podcasts specifically designed for English learners, like Slow English, Voice of America Learning English, or English Learning for Curious Minds, provides controlled vocabulary and clear pronunciation before moving on to authentic content for native speakers. Audiobooks paired with their text versions provide an excellent resource for improving the connection between written and spoken English. You can read along while listening, then practice shadowing sections to improve your pronunciation. Many libraries now offer digital audiobook lending, making this a cost-effective option. For thinking aloud practice, private moments throughout your day offer numerous opportunities while showering, walking alone, driving, or doing solitary tasks around your home. Start by describing what you're doing in simple English sentences. Then gradually move to expressing thoughts about your day, planning future activities, or reflecting on experiences, all directly in English. For speaking practice without access to native speakers, technology again offers solutions. Language exchange apps like Tandem, HelloTalk, or italki connect you with English speakers worldwide who want to learn your native language. You can practice through text chat, voice messages, or video calls, creating mutually beneficial language practice partnerships. virtual conversation groups, through platforms like Meetup or language learning websites provide another avenue for regular speaking practice. These groups often meet weekly around specific topics or simply for general conversation, providing a supportive environment for practicing with fellow learners and sometimes native speakers. As you implement these strategies, remember that consistency matters more than intensity. 10 minutes of daily practice yields better results than a 3-hour marathon once a week. The brain forms stronger neural connections through regular reinforcement than through occasional intensive exposure. Also crucial is the principle of deliberate practice. Focused attention on specific aspects of language that need improvement rather than passive exposure. When reading, notice how sentences are constructed. When listening, pay attention to intonation patterns. When speaking, monitor your pronunciation of challenging sounds. This conscious attention accelerates learning far more effectively than casual engagement. Throughout this process, maintain what psychologists call a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Language learning inevitably involves making mistakes, experiencing confusion, and facing challenges. Those with a growth mindset view these difficulties as opportunities for development rather than evidence of limited ability. They say, "I can't do this yet," rather than, "I can't do this." Jenny's story embodies this mindset perfectly. From her initial nervous conversation on the train to her immersive experience in London, she approached each challenge with curiosity and determination. She wasn't afraid to make mistakes or to try new techniques that initially seemed strange, like thinking aloud. This resilient attitude carried her through the inevitable difficulties of language learning to growing confidence and competence. As you continue your own English learning journey, I encourage you to approach it with the same spirit of adventure and growth. View each conversation, each book, each listening session, not just as language practice, but as an opportunity to expand your world and connect with others in meaningful ways. Remember that language learning is not a linear path, but a spiral. You'll revisit similar concepts at deeper levels as you progress, sometimes feeling like you're covering familiar ground while actually developing more nuanced understanding and fluency. Progress might seem slow at times, but consistent practice inevitably leads to improvement, often in surprising bursts of advancement after periods of apparent plateau. Like Jenny, you may find that your language learning journey takes unexpected turns and opens doors you hadn't anticipated. The simple act of learning English might lead to new friendships, professional opportunities, cultural insights, or personal growth in ways you can't currently foresee. The beauty of language learning lies in this transformative potential, its ability to change not just what you can do, but how you see yourself and the world around you. As you develop your ability to think, speak, and connect in English, you're not just acquiring a skill, you're expanding your capacity for expression, understanding, and human connection. What we've explored today through Jenny's story: the power of meaningful communication, the effectiveness of natural learning methods like extensive reading and shadowing, the transformative potential of thinking directly in English, represents an approach to language learning that honors the true purpose of language: to connect, to express, to understand and be understood. Whether you're just beginning your English journey or have been studying for years, I hope these insights inspire you to approach your learning with renewed enthusiasm and effective strategies. Remember Jenny's teacher's simple formula: read, listen, think, and speak in English every day. This balanced approach, practiced consistently with content that genuinely engages you, creates the conditions for natural, joyful, and effective language acquisition. And now, I'd love to hear about your own English learning journey. What strategies have worked best for you? Have you tried techniques like extensive reading, shadowing, or thinking aloud? What challenges are you currently facing in your learning process? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your insights might be exactly what another learner needs to hear. If you found this podcast helpful, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell so you never miss new content designed to support your language learning journey. And if you know someone who's learning English or another language, sharing this video could provide them with valuable strategies to enhance their learning. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, happy learning!